Can you give us a brief introduction? Who are you and what is your role?
Thank you for that question. I was made in Holland quite a few years ago and have always been in tech. From the early days, I studied space technology, so I started as a rocket scientist for quite a while. And that at that point in time, in the early mid 80s, was a really slow moving market, a slow moving industry. So it didn't really, the study was great, but the actual work was not exciting enough for me. So at that point in time, literally the internet was starting back in the US. And I was lucky enough to find one of the first American firms that were going big time investing into Europe, building networks first and then data centers. And again, I joined them, and since then, done a few more of those. I can say that I was like part of the early days of the internet in Europe, again, brought by the Americans, even to the extent that I spent the Millennium Year Change, or the Millennium New Year's Eve is what they call it, I think properly, in a data center, which again was the most boring night of my life. That said, I think there's a few things that where we end up right now, which are fantastic. I think the digital lives that we can have and are experiencing every day, looking at this video, having long distance interaction is very, very good. But there's also a few things which I think need to be improved, and we'll get to that at a later stage. And what made me switch and stop what I was doing and start doing what I'm doing right now is actually a story with my youngest son. And he approached me when he was 8. He's 15 today, so it's a while ago. But when he was 8, he said to me, like, can you help me? I want to boil an egg in the microwave. And I said, well, no, I don't think that that's possible. And I think it will turn into a mess. And he said, no, I've seen this. And I know that this can be done. And I said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. And if what I think happens, which is it becomes a big mess, then you clean, right? Because I don't want you to do it, and I don't want to clean it either. So he said, yeah, that's fine. So anyway, he gets a little cup, fills it half full with water, then he puts the egg in it, he puts it in the microwave, and he puts it at some time in wattage, which I don't remember. But the point of the story is that we got a perfectly boiled egg at the end of the exercise. And I was astonished because, again, I didn't have that piece of information, and neither did my wife, because I checked with her later. And what he came back with was, I did ask him, where did you get this? He said, well, YouTube. And the point of the story is that there's a lot of things which are happening and which are being presented and streamed on YouTube and what have you, but there's also a very big learning base possible through what is being posted out there. And the thing is that we here, where we are in the West, in the developed world, so to say, have access to that. We can afford it. We can do things with it. And for me, it was obvious at that point in time that just having it here and now, where we are, is just not enough. There's a couple of billion people which do not have access, and they need to be made an internet as well, which is sustainable, affordable, efficient. And that's where my journey started, which is the journey that I would like to speak about a little bit more today.
Can you explain the technology behind DigiCorp?
We need to build an internet which is for everyone and is enjoyable by everyone. And if we look at how things have developed in our own lives over the last, let's call it the last decade, then we're really, really very much depending on it in all sorts of cases. And again, the most recent one, the very obvious one is COVID. Unfortunately, COVID is here. And people have not been able to go physically to school, but they've been able to enjoy online lessons, right? I mean, a really, really important step, a really important bit, and it pushed even that technology further to where it is. So in order to make that technology work everywhere and work for everyone and work in an affordable way, you have to simplify it. And that is a way to go towards the technologies that we use, but with the very, very straightforward idea to make things simple and not to build a very complex model around it that needs lots of knowledge, and lots of knowledge means lots of money. Lots of money means that it's not available everywhere. So you need to take a view that and a starting point that you want to make it super simple. And super simple means it in the end just works. Now, that's a long introduction to what it is that we do and how we do it. But in the end, we've taken, because if and when you want to run applications, if and when you want to do process data and store data, because if you take the internet, it's all about creating data, processing data, transporting data, and then storing data somewhere. And we're all involved, whether it's for fun or whether it's for business or whether it's for a lot of other activities. We're all in the end data processors and data consumers, and we store data, to go back to it later. And what we did is, with the technologies that are available, and which is what the amalgamation, it's not the right word, but the get together of both DigiByte and Threefold has done, is that there is a very rock solid blockchain that has been standing for the last 7 years and has proven to stand up to all sorts of nastiness for the last 7 years. That is a starting point for actually creating a ledger. And what is a ledger? A ledger is something in which you store data. Today it's used for value transactions between people, but you can use the technology for a lot more. DigiCorp wants to start using DigiByte technology for a lot more than what it is being used for today, value transactions. Threefold has taken the approach and has been innovating on the fact that you want to have data processing and data storage, not just in those large data centers that we all know today, which are the big market leaders that have become so dominant. But in order to make it back to something by people and for people, and something that is a lot simpler, believe it or not, than what happens in those data centers, you need to start breaking it up into smaller quantities. And smaller quantities means that you don't need to have a soccer field sized data center in order to build an online service. You can do that also if and when you innovate in the right way and you sort of let go of certain assumptions and ways of doing and achieving goals. You can also do it from the comfort of your home. You can also do it from the comfort of putting a little computer inside a school or inside a city hall or inside a telephone mast or anywhere where network meets electricity. You can basically start to create data processing and data storage capabilities by using simple off-the-shelf hardware. That's what Threefold came in. Now, if you combine the two, a 7-year-long standing blockchain that has withstood the sense of time, that has withstood a lot of people that wanted to do malicious things with it. On the other side, some group of innovators that have taken a data center and, like an exploded view, created a way of producing the same kind of data processing and data storage capabilities, but then from a large number of places, including homes, including schools, including little huts somewhere, for example, in Africa. Then you've got like a utility that is being brought by people and created by people, again, fueled by an interest and an ROI, a return of investment that is based on a digital currency that is being created, with a blockchain technology to store state, to store information in a way that it is immutable and always append. If you put those two together, you can start running applications and you can start creating a metaverse and a metaverse experience by everyone and for everyone, which is really important in this case, that it's not another large conglomerate taking it forward and start building something that is all needful from that conglomerate.
What problems is DigiCorp solving and what are its benefits?
There's two main items which I believe today have a profound impact on our lives and are not necessarily done in the best way. And just a simple example, I mean, we exist, if we think about all of the apps on our phone, we exist 100 times over. There's 100 companies, if you have 100 apps on your phone, I do. There's 100 companies that have a small portion of information about what we are and what we do and how often we do that, and they collect information based on that. And in return, we get some form of a function to do something, sometimes for free, sometimes we pay a very little amount for it. But it's not an integrated experience. And again, a digital life should be an integrated experience and not a fragmented experience between many multiple different service providers and many multiple different places where you actually leave like breadcrumbs of information about what you do and how you do it. And again, different groups with different social interaction. And again, it's quite hard work, to be honest, between work and life and what have you. So that single digital sovereign identity that we know in real life, because again, I've got one passport, or some people have multiple, but I've got one. And if I travel, I'm that same person. And if I go to the city hall, I'm that same person. And everywhere I take my single document that sort of proves who I am to that other party. Well, on the internet, that doesn't exist today, because we have to give piecemeal information to each and every service provider that exists out there. They store that, they collect that, they hopefully deal very well with it, but we don't know. And that is a real problem which has developed over the last decade, for the simple reason that there's a business model in being able to claim your fame with a large number of users. So everybody is trying to claim as much users of their service as they can, because that in the end pumps up their value. But for us, the consumer, that doesn't help at all. It makes my life and your life difficult. So what we want to solve is that we want to get to one single identity stored somewhere very securely, back to blockchain, where we want to have that stored. And then anybody that wants to use that, or everywhere where we allow it to be used, we just give permission to use the information that is stored there. Super simple in the end, but that's something that we want to bring to the world. It's one part. The other thing that needs to be solved is that right now, and for you, some of you who are in the know, they know this, but everything that we know that we call internet today, and internet is always a mix between a network and data center that contain data, because it's data and transport of data. But those data storage data centers, or those data centers that store that data, there are only a very limited amount of it, and we don't realize that. But all of the services that we use, I believe, live in less than 500 of those massive data centers. And they don't exist everywhere because they take massive amount of power, which is not available everywhere. They take a massive amount of capital to build. They take a massive amount of people to operate and maintain them, which is just not available everywhere. So by design, by doing it that way, and again, I'm not trying to talk bad about them. They've built this digital life that we know today in a way that we can actually enjoy that. But it's not a way that will scale us going forward to actually scale to the level, because it scales exponentially, believe it or not. I mean, we take many more pictures, and any time a new phone comes out, the size of the pictures that we take grows. So data storage just grows exponentially, and usage as well. And the rate at which those facilities can be built, they cost $500 million. They take a year to build. I mean, it's just too slow to keep up with that trend of actually servicing and dealing with all of us. So to us, the answer is to decentralize that, to no longer depend on those large data centers. And again, they do a very good job. They have very good protection. They've got physical guards. You know where it is. You know where your data is if you know where the facility is. But they don't scale very well in terms of number of them. And hence we need to downscale the size of them, and hence we need to downscale, and that's what we want to do, to downscale it to a size where in the end everybody can own a little part of that data storage and data processing facility, again, in their home, maybe even in a data center. I mean, I've got nothing against data centers. Maybe in a school, maybe in something that is wind and dust proof and that has electricity and connectivity. We should be able to generate data processing and data storage capabilities everywhere, because we're also generating data everywhere. And today we rely on the network being the connectivity or the connection between where we create it and where it is stored. And that can be, in many occasions, many thousands of miles away. And then think of the silly example that you share a picture with your friend who lives around the corner, but it might travel 1,000 miles to a data center, and it might travel 1,000 miles back to your friend, to his phone. That is just not a very sustainable and efficient way of doing it. So we're all about decentralizing that large scale facility. And we're not saying that we should replace those. Those should be there because they have a purpose. There are use cases, digital use cases, that only work in those large scale facilities. But there is a lot of use cases as well that can be done in a very different way, where we provide capacity, data processing, and storage everywhere for everybody to enjoy. And that's the two main things that we want to address.
Can you elaborate a bit on how DigiCorp technology is future-proof?
Future-proofing that you can continue to have a digital life, but you can do it in such a way that you contain the information that you create in almost like a private vault, which again, based on your digital sovereign identity, gives you access to that vault. And if and when you want your friends to see a part of all of what's in the vault, you invite them. And I tend to compare it to your home. I mean, your home is a very sacred and private place as well. And you keep a lot of stuff in there that some of it can see the daylight, some of it cannot, right? That's just how we all are wired. And we do invite people there, but it's our choice. It's not that when we, I don't know, cook a certain meal or cook something, that Unilever knows what we've cooked and what temperature and for how long, and did we enjoy it, yes or no. I mean, that is something that we keep private. And I think in order to get to that, future-proofing it, I think with a growing awareness of people not wanting to leave those breadcrumbs of data, wanting to do it in a different way, we've devised technology by actually being able to store that data, if and when you want to store that data, inside a place that you know, inside a place that you agree with, inside a place that your company's governance policy agrees with. You just ring fence this piece of data does not leave these physical devices. And these physical devices can be devices in people's homes. These physical devices can be in the telephone mast. I mean, it's your choice. It's me choosing, and not these cloud market leaders that decide like, okay, you've selected the west coast of the US, but since we now need to make a backup and there is not enough capacity to do it there, we transport it all to the east coast of the US, or even worse, to another continent, because that's just what they can do. So we've done all of the, what I said earlier, all of the simplifying and all of the hard steps to go down to the nitty-gritty, lowest level and layer of technology. And that really means talking directly with hardware and making it work again with hardware, and not stacking layers of software on top of each other, building new functionality, but not looking at what's underneath and what is the foundation of all of that. We really went down to the bottom of it. We said, okay, if and when we want to achieve this goal of being decentralized, being distributed, being able to create capacity everywhere, being able to store capacity in such a way that you can literally say, this physical device, this physical disk, this physical disk, this physical disk, how do we do that? And that's what we spent the last 15 years. I mean, this is not something we did overnight. This is not something that just came to us. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes and we did a lot of improvements. We learned a lot, and we believe that we're here now with that foundation, digital sovereign identity, and this distributed and decentralized capacity, that we're going to now start building this metaverse, which is a new way of experiencing the internet, on top of it, with all of the trust and with all of the bells and whistles that you need in order to prove that your data does live where you want it to live and not anywhere else. Again, if you still want to use your Google account, if you still want to use your Dropbox, if you still want to use those other things, those are all available to you. It's not that we say don't use them, but then you step back in the old world, and again, your data is then somewhere where you might not know where it exactly is.